In April of 2019, I decided to solo hike the Pacific Crest Trail. It had been a dream of mine ever since I watched the movie Wild. Anyway, after much planning, I finally began my journey on April 30th in Campo, California. Now, I estimated that it would take me about 6 months or so to complete the trail, with my final destination being Canada. On the first day of my hike, I managed to walk 25 miles despite the desert heat, which was an accomplishment for me. The further I hiked the PCT though, is when I began to notice just how beautiful yet dangerous the desert could be. I nearly stepped on some rattlesnakes on the trail. Anyway, it was my 53rd day on the trail when I finally reached the famous Kennedy Meadows. I decided to rest up there for a few days before heading back onto the trail again. It was several days later when I felt invigorated enough and was back on the trail again. About a week after leaving Kennedy Meadows is when inexplicable things began to plague me. It was around Yosemite National Park when I noticed I was being followed. Now, there are other hikers and even wildlife, but this felt different, so, as a female hiker, I had to be cautious. Anyway, I found myself walking faster, and according to my GPS, there was a campsite nearby. It was about 20 minutes later when I finally reached the campsite. I breathed a sigh of relief when I noticed there were several other campers there too. Feeling exhausted, I decided to camp there for the night. After setting up my tent, I decided to have something to eat before going to sleep. It was around 11 p.m. when I was awoken by someone, or something, calling my name. At first, I thought it was a dream that was until I heard it again. Needless to say, I didn't get much sleep that night. Anyway, the next few days on the trail were without incident. That all changed though on my 56th day on the trail when I somehow managed to twist my ankle, which forced me off the trail for a few days. Since I was 20 miles or so from the nearest town, I decided to find a campsite and rest up until my ankle felt a little better. After I found my campsite, I pitched my tent and lay down for a bit. When I finally woke up, it was already dark outside. What made it even scarier was the fact that I was alone at this campsite. Although I was feeling apprehensive, I had no choice but to stay. At this point, I had forgotten about the voice I had heard several days ago, but that was about to change. Anyway, I was hungry, but after my meal of beans and rice, I began to feel drowsy again and decided to lie down. As I was about to fall into a deep sleep, I heard someone shout, "Please help me, Kim, please help me, Kim, please help me, Kim," in rapid succession. Anyway, the voice was the same one from 3 days earlier, which unnerved me even more because I was certain now, this person or thing was stalking me. Despite knowing this though, I still wanted to see who or what it was terrorizing me. I slowly unzipped my tent, and as I was opening the flap, I heard a scream. My heart began to pound. Using my flashlight, I scanned the nearby woods and saw a figure standing off in the distance. I couldn't make out any features, but it was humanoid in shape. "Who are you?" I shouted. "Who are you?" it replied. "What do you want? What do you want?" Now, it was clearly mocking me, and at this point, I was truly scared. With nowhere to go though, I decided to stay in my tent until morning. While I was sitting there, I could hear it circling my tent, which lasted for an hour or so. Right at the crack of dawn, I quickly packed up my gear, even though my ankle was still hurting. As I was packing up, I noticed several sets of footprints surrounding my tent, except these weren't human, confirming my worst fears. Anyway, I somehow managed to make it to the nearest town, where I stayed for about a week in order for my ankle to heal. Despite my frightening experience though, I eventually got back onto the PCT and made it to Canada without another incident, although I was still being followed. As soon as I got home, I did some research, and the results I got were about skinwalkers and the Wendigo. Now, I'm not saying what I experienced on the PCT was supernatural. I'm a skeptic, but who knows what's real and what's not. Anyway, to those of you who are thinking about hiking the PCT, my story isn't intended to discourage you from hiking it, but rather it's a cautionary tale about the potential dangers on the trail. Stay safe, everyone, and happy hiking.